Now, Brazil's former President Jair Bolsonaro has posted a picture of himself on Monday from hospital. He's been in Orlando, Florida since the end of last year. Bolsonaro said he had new adhesions and was discharged from hospital. He was stabbed in the abdomen in an attack during the 2018 campaign. We can now bring in France 24's international affairs editor, Philip Turle. Great to see you, Philip. How are authorities over in Brazil handling the investigation?
I think there's a definite desire by President Lula and the authorities to really clamp down and stamp out this and to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I think this has been a real wake-up call for the Brazilian authorities, and all sorts of questions, Delano, that are still waiting to be answered. Notably, how was all of this able to take place? Remember when we were talking about the elections last month, when President Lula was sworn into office? People were arrested then who wanted to cause trouble during the swearing-in ceremony, either with bombs or knives or fireworks, just to create trouble. We've seen for months large groups of supporters of President Bolsonaro, former President Bolsonaro, setting up camps and tents around military compounds, trying to incite the military to go ahead with a coup d'etat, to re-put President Bolsonaro back into power after the election of President Lula. All of these were telltale signs long before the events of the day before yesterday. So I think there's going to be a real inquiry now as to why nothing was done, why the necessary steps weren't taken to prevent this from happening. And the second point, which is really important to underline here, is how come the army, the police and the security services were not in the knowledge that this kind of event could happen? And why didn't they do something on the day to stop it from becoming so bad? Were they infiltrated? We've had already the governor of Brasilia and the head of the security services being either withdrawn from their job for a certain period or purely and simply sacked. They were both known to be supporters of President Bolsonaro. What was their role in this? Did they let these protesters or the planning of this go ahead without intervening to stop it? I think all of those are questions that are going to have to be answered pretty quickly to quell the fears of those who voted for President Lula and all those who don't want the democratic system in Brazil to come under some kind of threat or be simply done away with if the military were to undertake a coup d'etat.
Let's talk about Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, for a second, because he tweeted a picture of himself in a hospital in Orlando. He's been discharged. Now he thanked his supporters for their prayers, what have you. But there have been calls for him to be expelled from the United States.
That is true. There's growing pressure on President Biden to send Bolsonaro back to Brazil. There are several congressmen and women who said that this is really not correct, that someone like he should be in Florida, he should be sent back immediately. Well, the latest news coming out of Brazil today is that Bolsonaro is saying that he is going to go back to Brazil to see his doctors there because, as we've just been seeing, he's in hospital. Back in 2018, he was a victim of a knife attack in the intestines. He has intestinal blockage from time to time. That comes back, and he's back in hospital with that in Florida. But it appears that he's going to go back to Brazil. Is it because of the pressure he wants to go before he's thrown out of the US, or is it really because he needs to go and see his doctors? But I think we can be now more certain that he will go back to Brazil. What he will face when he gets back there, we don't know. And I think one of the questions that you have to ask is, does this kind of event, this kind of storming of Congress, as we saw in the United States 2 years ago, Delano, does this kind of event really prove to be profitable for the person behind it all? In the case of Donald Trump, not really sure whether or not he's benefited from it in the long term. He's managed to survive up until now, but he's got all these problems that he's having to deal with as a result of that, and also for other reasons. Will it profit Bolsonaro? It doesn't look as though it's going to profit him too much. On the spur of the moment, maybe, but the long-term effect, I think, is going to be pretty negative for him and his chances if he wants to be re-elected.
Only difference is Donald Trump was in the vicinity of the Capitol attack. Jair Bolsonaro was in a different country, so that could be his Hail Mary. Thank you very much for that, Philip Turle there.